Hello, how are you on this hot sunny day in Northern Ireland? How often indeed do we get to say hello and welcome to a hot and sunny Northern Ireland? A little bit too hot perhaps as the day goes on. I think it's about 27 degrees at the moment, which is kind of toasty for us here. I hope you're managing to stay hydrated and stay cool, and if you are able to enjoy the sun, then please make sure you're doing so nice and safely so you don't get too burnt. How's life? How are things? Let me know in the comments how things are going for you. You will have noticed the musings this week are a little later than normal. From the 1st of August they will be in and around 3 o'clock each Monday rather than lunchtime. This is due to some changes in my working environment. As always, there'll be a replay on YouTube and on the page, so don't worry if you can't catch them live. I appreciate that you may be at work and can't just drop what you're doing to check in on the musings. You'll always get them in the weekly email as well. If you're on the mailing list and you've subscribed to the weekly musings mailing list, you'll get them there anyway, so don't worry. But it is nice if you're able to join me live. Let me know you're here, let me say hi, let me know that I'm not talking to myself. This week I decided to use cards from my favourite tarot deck. Well, when I say favourite, the tarot deck that I use to do my private readings, which is called Tarot of the Old Path. And it's a particularly nice deck with slightly different imagery than the Rider-Waite-Smith deck that we're mainly all familiar with. I know that the tarot sometimes puts people on edge a little bit, which is why I usually use oracle cards for these musings each week. But from time to time I do like to dip into the tarot, because that's my first love. That's where you get the deepest nuances of meaning. Now, with all things tarot, you do have to let them percolate a little bit. You may have seen, if you follow the page on the story this morning, that I was sitting in the back garden reading the cards from this morning, so they've been kind of percolating. The blog post has already come up, so you may have already had a wee read and checked out what they have to say, but it's important when you're reading tarot to give the cards time to speak to you. Important when you're reading any cards, but particularly the tarot, because they've so many layers of meaning. So no doubt I will look into these cards even further tonight. Tonight I'm teaching, or I say teaching, I'm not really teaching, I'm enjoying the Mystical Mondays group, which is my tarot focused group that meets every fortnight on a Monday, and we meet by Zoom so that people from all over the place, wherever they may be, can join, and it's great crack. So if you're a tarot enthusiast and love to read the cards and want some support, why don't you join us, because it's a great wee group. Anyway, what else have I got to tell you? Let me think, is there any other news? You will have seen, if you're on the mailing list, you'll have seen through the week that from the 1st of August there are some changes to the structure of services within Rocks and Rituals, and it's important just that I give you a little bit of background as to what's going on. You can still have Reiki sessions with me, so don't panic. People have been emailing going, oh my god, can I still see you for Reiki? I'm like, yes, of course you can. However, primarily I am stepping back from the front line a little bit, just simply for two reasons. One, to allow my daughter Shannon, who has been training and working very hard to skill up in the Reiki world, and it's to step back to allow her some space and some time to explore Reiki and to offer these sessions to you. And secondly as well, it's to allow me to focus more on mentoring and teaching, which is where my strengths lie. And with the years of experience I have, it's important for me to step back a little bit and allow the next generation to come through, and that means allowing my daughter to take over some of the sessions. Now, as always, if you're my regular clients, nothing's going to change for you. If you're one of my member clients, nothing will change for you. You'll still see me as normal. However, I would encourage any of you who don't normally have regular appointments, why not come along and let Shannon work her Reiki magic on you. Her little Reiki hands are amazing. She's got such strength in them, there's such a strength of the energy flow whenever she's working on you, and the reviews from people who've worked with her already have been mind-blowing. People are just blown away by the power in those young hands. So I often remind people that it's not the practitioner that's doing the work, it's Reiki that's doing the actual healing work. So it doesn't matter whether your practitioner is newly started or whether they're a master of 50 plus years. The energy is still the same because it's Reiki energy. It's the person who's holding the space. And that's really important to remember. Shannon is a very disciplined meditator. She meditates more than I do. And that is true. She has a better meditation record on a daily basis than I have. And she is very disciplined in that respect. And it shows in her practice. So I would urge you, please, make yourself an appointment. She sees clients on Tuesday evenings, Wednesday mornings and Thursday evenings at the moment. However, speak to me if those times don't work for you and we'll get something else booked in. She will often be able to see you potentially on a Saturday morning maybe, when I can't. So I think that's all I need to say to you about that. As I say, the reason behind this is to let me step back and do some other work with mentoring and teaching, and I've also taken on a little bit of additional work which has just taken me out of the diary a little bit. So my appointment times will be limited to later in the afternoons on Mondays to Thursdays, and then on the last Friday of each month I will have a client clinic day along with the last Saturday of each month. So in that respect, I still have client availability. However, priority will be given to members and to my mentoring students, my Reiki mentoring students. So do check in and get your appointment made as and when you want to with Shannon. She's also going to be training in crystals as well, and I can't wait to see what she does with those. But for now, get on board while you can. She's a psychology student with the OU, so she'll be back at uni from October, so now's the time to take advantage of as many appointments as you can with her. The cards, let's get back to the reading and the reasons for our musings today. Tarot of the old deck. So the cards that come up today are the Mastery card. I'm not sure, can you see? The Mastery card, which is the tarot or the Chariot in a normal tarot deck. Okay, so it depicts a bearded warrior type man with I think it's some sort of branch with leaves. There's flames coming out of one horse. There's each horse represents different elements, so there's 4 different horses. He's in the chariot driving them forward, mountain in the background. So for those of you listening on the podcast, that's a brief description of the card. We then have the King of Pentacles, which depicts a regal figure looking off into the distance and some flowers behind him, he's holding a great big pentacle. And then we have the Page of Pentacles with a rather dodgy bowl cut, haircut, I may say, some daffodils in the background, a pentacle on his chest, and his arms folded with armour on. So interesting cards with a story to tell. The tarot always has a little bit of a story. So let me just take a wee drink and we'll get started. So hot today and so warm. I'm very thirsty. Okay, so the first thing that strikes me as I look at these cards, now I'm not sure if you'll be able to see this very well, but as I look at these cards in particular, so if I hold the 3 of them up, hold them this, so the 3 of them up, okay, and then I'll hold just these 2. The King is looking at the Chariot. Now as I have these laid down in front of me, the Chariot is on the left, the King is in the middle, and the Knight is on the right hand side. Okay, and when I look at these, when I have them in front of me and I'm looking down at them, the King is looking directly at the Mastery card. Now with the Mastery card being on the left hand side, it's in the position in a 3 card reading. The left card will be the past, the middle will be the present, and the right hand card will be the future. Okay, so the King of Pentacles is looking back at the Mastery card when I look at this, and immediately the first thing that strikes me is like he's contemplating how he mastered things in the past. He's contemplating all the moves and the experience, the hard work that's put him where he is today, because I get the feeling that the King of Pentacles is a very regal card. He's very, well off in the tarot kingdom. He is the king of the wealthiest family in the tarot, the Pentacles deck, or Pentacles suit, and he's looking back at this younger version perhaps who was able to master those emotions and ride through his life, mastering everything he came across. The card itself in this deck's called Mastery, so it's about that self-mastery, mastering your emotions, being confident and actually driving forward. So I'm thinking that when I'm looking at this, it's like the King of Pentacles is looking back at this and thinking, you know, his success today is down to all the hard work and all the times where he was fearless and where he mastered his emotions and stepped forward. Okay. The young page, however, he's looking sort of wistfully. He's not looking completely directly at you, but just slightly off center. And it's almost a wistful look. He's got his arms folded, there's armor across his arms, there's a slight air of bravado and maybe stubbornness mixed with a little bit of uncertainty, maybe a wee hint of sadness there. It's almost, I sometimes say this, like the way I'm looking at it today, it's like, you know, when we were young we all thought we knew best, and it's almost like he's kind of stubbornly knowing that he knows best perhaps, and he's wanting to do things his own way, or maybe he's getting bored waiting for this King of Pentacles to give him the reins and to pass things over. So a couple of meanings immediately sort of sprung to mind for me this morning as I was looking at these cards. You know, perhaps it's a message to look back at your own past experiences. How have you got to where you are today? Remember, previously in our musings we've talked about how we have to take responsibility for our lives and how we have to take responsibility for the reality in which we find ourselves, because we are here as a result of our choices and our behaviors and our thoughts and our words. So is it a message to look back and see how far you've come, to celebrate your successes, to understand how each decision has led you to where you are? I recently watched Sliding Doors. I'm sure many of you have seen it. I've seen it several times, but it's always a great movie. It was on TV maybe a week to 10 days ago, and we just sat down to watch it just for something, just a bit of chill time. And it's a brilliant movie because it kind of shows you all the different paths your life can take through one fateful event being different. And perhaps that's where you're at. Maybe you're looking and you're seeing how all your decisions and actions have led you to where we are today. Or maybe it's asking you to learn from your past and move forward with fresh new eyes. Maybe it's you've forgotten the lessons of your past, and maybe you need to lean on more experienced people to take that advice before you can move forward. Maybe you think you don't need help and you can move forward a little bit like this page. So these were some of the thoughts that were running around my head as I looked at these. As I said earlier, the Mastery card in the traditional tarot deck is all about confidence of youth, of mastering those emotions, driving forward with confidence. You know, you can see in the card, for those of you watching the video, you can see in the card how he's mastering the chariot and mastering the direction of those 4 horses. He's holding the reins of the 4 horses in one hand, effortlessly driving them forward. You know, each horse represents the physical elements of earth, air, fire and water, and this card in particular is linked to the zodiac sign of Cancer. So the chariot's a vehicle for transportation and change and, you know, transformation, if you let it. But in this spread it's sitting to the left, so it's sitting in the past. So I'm saying it here today as past experiences of you having come through a period where you were really moving forward and really driving things forward. So now do you feel stuck? Or has the energy sort of paused? Are you having to reflect? Are you having to look back? You know, are you maybe reminiscing, looking at how life has changed for you, taking stock? And there's no harm in doing that. It's important that we do that. Particularly, there was quite a shift in energy as July came in from the first 6 months of the year, and we were talking about taking stock of the first 6 months of the year and then thinking about where we wanted to be as the year, you know, wraps up, as we move into the last half of the year. But perhaps now, as we're moving into the second half of July, you're looking back even at the last 2 weeks and seeing the results of some changes. You tell me what's going on. We then have this King of Pentacles, who is a very strong card. You know, this king's meticulous, methodical, plans each and every step before he actually takes action. Can sometimes the downside of that can be a little pedantic and a little bit slow to move, and a little bit, you know, dots every I and crosses every T, and that can be infuriating for people watching from the sidelines. But he didn't get to where he is by having frivolous actions. He had to plan things. You know, pentacles represent the material realm. They represent finances, stability, you know, food, shelter, everything that we need for survival. So perhaps it's not surprising that this card has shown up, and particularly not surprising that he's shown up looking at his experiences and where he has mastered life, because we're in this cost of living crisis where everybody's kind of pulling things in. There's a slight element of fear coming back into the consciousness, where people are holding tight onto their finances, pulling back. They've dropped things like self-care because they don't believe it's important anymore, because they have to, you know, pay extra money for fuel and food, and that's totally understandable. It's totally understandable. However, remember that you are just as important, so don't drop your self-care completely. You know, most of us are trying to work out how we can better utilize our skills. You know, what do we need to learn? What do we need to plan for? How can we maybe save energy costs? How can we maybe, you know, grow our own food? I know I've started to look at that now that we've moved into the new house finally. Hooray! We are, you know, we've started to experiment. It's a learning curve. It's something I don't know a huge amount about, but I am willing to learn. So I've got lettuce and tomatoes and strawberries and things growing, and some herbs at the moment, and I'm working on it. It'll probably take maybe a year or two before it really works out, but I think it's important that we also plan for these things and try and lean on our experiences. So the king showing up today, looking at this, you know, looking at this mastery, I feel he's really digging deep into his experiences. He's digging deep into finding what worked for him in the past and what he needs to take forward now, what experiences he can pass on, what information he can share. Okay, you know, because the Knight has also shown up, the Knight of Pentacles, sorry, not the page, has also shown up here. Perhaps we are sort of, the Knight's almost nearly impatiently waiting. He's like almost nearly tapping his fingers on the armor, going, right, come on Dad, pass the reins. You know, because when in the tarot family we're thinking, you know, the King of Pentacles is seen as the Knight's father figure. Okay, so we're sort of looking at this, and perhaps that's what's going on, that the King of Pentacles is considering how he can pass this information on. Okay, let me know what you think about that. That resonates quite a lot with me, given what I'm doing at the moment with my daughter, that I'm trying to pass on my years of Reiki experience to her, to help her get started as a Reiki practitioner and get her out into the professional realm of working with Reiki energy and healing energy. So it does resonate quite strongly with me in that respect, you know. So there's that element of contemplation and looking back and thinking, right, okay, what phase of my life am I moving into now? I was also considering earlier, as I said to you at the start of this, tarot readings percolate. You need to let them percolate and sit with them for a little while. And this morning, these were some of the thoughts that were coming to me. But as the day has worn on, I've also come to realize that I personally work in seasons. And I don't know if it's just the heat today, but I love the sunshine, don't get me wrong, and I love good weather. I struggle a little bit when it's oppressively hot, if I'm not somewhere with air conditioning and a swimming pool, which I'm not. But I tend to work in seasons, and I notice that in the summer, unlike many people, I know a lot of people in the summer, and I have a couple of therapists in mind at the moment, you'll know who you are, who I know love the sun, and the minute the sun comes out you can see them, they're blooming and their energy rises significantly. And yes, the sun does have that influence on me as well, it does. I sat in meditation this morning in the garden and breathed in the sunlight and enjoyed the boost of energy it gave me. However, when I look at things across a year, I've come to realize that I actually work in seasons, and that for me my energy dips a little in the summer and comes really to fruition in autumn time, because that's my favorite season. And then I really love that transition of summer into winter, and that sort of the turn of the leaves and all that sort of thing, and the magic in the air. So I've come to realize that spring and autumn, the two transitionary seasons for me, are where my energy's at their highest, and the summer season would see my energy dip a little. So it's worth noticing that as well. And again, as I let these cards percolate, I started to think that perhaps the king is in that season of his life now where he's thinking, right, I need to take a back seat and I need to push the knight forward. Let me know what you think. The Knight card here, you know, he's quite slow and stagnant. If you look at this card in the traditional Rider-Waite deck, he is sitting on a horse that's not moving. Now, it's not the same imagery in my deck that I'm using today, but however, the symbolism is still kind of carried forward with him standing with the arms crossed and a very solemn, sort of almost a grumpy look on his face. And the Knight of Pentacles is also sometimes quite significant about stopping and waiting and pausing and being stuck. So I would ask, are you stuck, or do you feel stuck? Are you still in this sort of period of looking back, looking round, trying to understand what's going on, and you haven't quite got the moving forward part nailed yet? You know, is he maybe waiting for his father to actually hand these reins over? Is he actually waiting to be given the green light to move ahead? And again, this can come back to the season aspect where we're really holding back sometimes because it's maybe just not the right time. Maybe it is time to reflect on the experiences and then move forward. Another element of this as well is that astrologically the asteroid Chiron or whatever you want to call it, Chiron, goes retrograde this week, and it can leave us feeling that we're going over old ground. When Chiron goes retrograde, it's the wounded healer comes up, so we might relive old hurts. We might see things that come up for us again, and it might feel like, oh my god, we're going over old ground again. Why? Particularly because when Chiron goes retrograde, there'll be 4 planetary bodies in retrograde, and that can feel like we're really pulled back. So, you know, are you looking back at your old hurts and still carrying them with you? Maybe it's time to let them go. Learn from them, see how much you've grown, but move forward. You know, use that energy from the Mastery card, the Chariot, to actually push forward so that you're not stuck like this Knight of Pentacles who's not actually moving forward at all here. You know, sometimes you do need to rise up and see the bigger picture. However, sometimes you do need that moment of pause so that you can plan and can take the next steps, you know, with attention to detail and not rush in. Okay, one step at a time. This is the thing, if you do feel stuck and you're not sure what your next step is, then the next step is to find out, what is my next step? How do I get to this place? You know, do I need to seek the advice of someone older? Do I need to lean back into what worked for me last time? You know, how did I do this before? Or if you've never done it before, then has someone else done it? Can you ask for help? So they're interesting cards with lots of different nuances in them. As I say, I'm going to sit with them for another wee while. I'll no doubt talk about them tonight with my tarot group, and I'll maybe pop a little edit in later in the week to let you know what we said about them if anything different came up. But I let them brew, and I would suggest you do the same. So Mastery, King of Pentacles and the Knight of Pentacles, what do they have to say to you? Very earthy energy for me, very reflective as always in nature. Definitely resonates with me from the point of view of the interpretation of the older person passing the baton to the younger generation, because that's what I'm doing with my daughter at the moment. But also I really like that Mastery card at the front. There's an awful lot of green as well throughout this, and that speaks to me as well. If you checked out the story this morning, you'll see that behind my house there's nothing but green fields. So it's a time for that just earthiness and that quality of being out in nature and enjoying life as well. So all these things were speaking to me today, and these are the things that I thought I would muse about as we went through. Let me know what you think. As I say, there's a couple of wee typos I'm just going to fix in the blog post where I had mentioned page instead of night. Clearly hadn't had my coffee this morning whenever I was typing that up. However, the interpretation's still very much the same, so don't worry about that. Let me know what you think. Where are you right now? Are you pushing forward like the Chariot, really going, everything's going your way and it's all good? Or are you more like the King right now and reflecting and planning, looking back at your past experiences, but then dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's to move into another phase? Or are you like this Knight of Pentacles, maybe a little bit impatient, sitting, waiting, maybe not moving forward, maybe scared to commit to your next step? Where does the challenge come up for you, and what did the cards say to you? So let me know in the comments, and as I say, I'll be back again next week. Timing for next week, I'm probably going to keep it in and around the same time as this, but as I said, from the 1st of August the live videos will be later in the afternoon, so they'll be about 3:30 on a Monday rather than the 1 o'clock time slot where they used to be, just simply due to new working arrangements for me and new commitments that have appeared in my diary over the last little while. So I hope all is well with you. I hope you get some time to enjoy the sunshine and today and tomorrow before it breaks on Wednesday, but stay safe and enjoy yourselves, and I'll speak to you again next week.